So again, welcome to our presentation tonight. We wanted to start out with thanking you all for attending because like Jillian said, we know it's a very busy time and it's a very busy world right now. And so we know that it takes a lot for people to take time out of their schedule to come to a presentation. So we really appreciate you doing that for yourself, but also for your kids. So we wanted to start with just kind of introducing ourselves a little bit. So my name is Kim Sundell, and I'm one of the social workers here at Durham Catholic. I know that my screen doesn't match my name right now, so I'm going to change it as soon as I'm done talking. but I didn't want to interrupt my flow, so I'll change it in a second. But my name is Kim Sundell. So I've been here with the board for about 10 years, and I've worked most of that time in the Ajax family of schools. So I work in a high school, and then I also have some elementary schools. I've also been lucky enough to co-facilitate some groups with Jillian for probably the past 5 years. We had a pilot group that we kind of organized here at Durham Catholic for younger children with anxiety or worries, and it's a CBT based group. So Jillian and I have been doing that. I guess before coming here, I worked in a lot of different settings, always focused on working with kids and teenagers, child protection, but also some community-based settings and hospital-based settings as well.
And perfect timing, Kim. So while I chat for a minute, you can change your
name. Thank you.
So my name is Jillian Cipriani, and I am also very excited to be here and try this kind of new endeavor. I think this year, 2020, 2021, is a lot of things we're trying new and see what works and how we can reach people the most. So I'm a social worker with the board as well. I've been a social worker in total for about 20 years, working in different areas, mainly of children's mental health, and so with families or with children. I typically work more, my schools are in the Whitby area, but we do sometimes get moved around to different schools at different times. So we're very open to all areas. And we're really looking forward to meeting with your children and kind of moving forward with this new group. So thank you for joining us. We are very excited for you to be part of this journey with us.
So like most presentations, we'll start out with a bit of an agenda. So you can see on the screen, I mean, we've already kind of introduced ourselves, but the next bullet points are what we were hoping to cover in our group tonight. So we wanted to kind of give some information about the effect of the pandemic on youth mental health, talk about some ways that you can support your child's mental health and also your own. We wanted to give a bit of information about the Trails to Wellness program, so a little bit about the history and some of the programs that are out there from Trails to Wellness. And then obviously give a bit of an overview and of the goals of Trails to Wellness, the Coping with COVID series. We'll also get into the logistics and next steps. And then we also have some great resources that we wanted to share with you all. So let's start out with a video to kind of kick things off. This is a video of some interviews with some real live teenagers, kind of about their experience with COVID-19 and the impact on their mental health. So take a look.
This is it, school year 2020.
We're living literally in a history book right now, like school, opening in the middle of a pandemic.
I remember when I was little, my parents would ask me if I was excited for the new school year, and I'd always respond with, well, I don't like school, but at least I can see my friends. And now I can't even have that.
As opposed to being in the classroom and having that physical interaction, I'm in my room, alone, just me, with my bed right there, and I might get the urge to just be like, well, maybe I should just go hop in that bed and go to sleep, but you can't do that.
My online experience hasn't been terrible, just boring. If I could sum it up in a color, it'd be beige.
Going through 3 years of marching band, you're looking forward to being a senior. When you're playing by yourself, it does feel a little bit weird.
The internet doesn't work, the service doesn't work, so I can't really access my grades, my Zoom, I can't do anything.
My school year has been so weird so far. We wear masks every day. one-way hallways, one-way stairwells, really weird lunch seating that, in my opinion, is not social distancing.
Being in that school setting again is so nice. Oh God, I can't believe I just said that.
You don't get the same social interactions as you usually do going all traditional because there's, I don't know, 6 people in every class.
I wish my parents understood how difficult it is for us kids these days and how much we are going through. They think we have a perfect life and we shouldn't stress about anything.
I can't even imagine how difficult it is for the teachers right now. So I hope people just try to empathize with us and just realize that we're all very stressed out and confused right now.
This year I happen to be worried a lot. I hope COVID-19 never happen again.
I really hope they find the vaccine soon because I just miss my old life. So yeah.
So as you can see in the video, lots of different impacts on youth today living through this COVID-19 experience. And it's really quite a new experience for everybody, but really kind of hitting our kids in a hard way. So we wanted to just spend a little bit of time going through some of the common reactions to COVID-19 that you might notice in your child, your son or daughter, over the last year or so. Thank you, Jillian. So one of them worries about anxiety or the safety of themselves, their family and friends. Sometimes it might be something that they say, or maybe people will notice this in writing or in messages that they're sending to other people where parents are privy to that information. Another reaction is around their eating. Some parents have noticed that their son or daughter might be eating too much or not enough. They may notice some changes around meal times and snack times that are different than before. They could see an increase in disruptive behaviors, more arguing, defiance, angry outbursts, just different reactions than what they had seen in the past. Some parents have voiced some concerns around, kids having reactions to people who have different backgrounds. I think that there's been lots in the media around COVID-19, and it has kind of made the experience for some people more difficult than others. Lots of kids and parents are talking about noticing boredom or loneliness at home. Kids aren't able to access their friends or the activities that they enjoyed in the same way at all right now. Some parents and students and kids, they may be avoiding or isolating themselves from others. So even when they're given the opportunity to be around others, they're avoiding that. They may have a fear of other major emergencies or a fear that other very difficult catastrophic things may happen. Lots of times people are noticing differences in energy level. Either people are very, very active or very, very tired, or they could be more impatient or agitated. Sleep is a big concern, either sleeping too much or not enough. The change in schedule and online learning for many kids, has really caused some changes in their sleeping. They just have the opportunity to sleep more than they ever used to before, and they're taking advantage of that. They're able to do that. Increased crying, sadness, or feeling depressed. Lots of kids are talking about feeling this way and having never felt this way before. So these are new kind of changes in their mood that we think are reactions to COVID-19. Well, thanks, Jillian. Sorry. So there was some exciting research that's come out of sick kids. They were able to, do some research with some of their patients and some younger people. And they were really looking into what the experience was for kids with their mental health, especially in the first wave of COVID-19. And so they completed a study that was published in the European Child and Adolescent Psychiatry Journal in February 2021. And obviously it does talk about some significant impacts on the mental health of kids. So as you can see in that small clip, 70% of kids felt changes in their mental health as a result of some of the closures related to the pandemic. And so that's a staggeringly high number. And I don't think any of us would be surprised that that's the percentage of kids who are struggling. I think that one of the things that stands out for me with that video too is around, the impact of the social isolation and the need for safe interaction. And I think that it's a challenge, but it is a very important thing that we can do to support our kids. The social interaction is affecting them. And so the more we can do to help them with that, the better they'll be. So here are just some other tips around supporting your child or youth during COVID-19 and things that you can do. So the first one there is communicating and starting an open conversation with the young person. The more honest and open you can be, the better. I think that those kind of conversations, they really tend to reassure kids, and they really tend to let kids know that it's okay for them to talk about that with you, and that you have some super amazing things to share with them about that. I think it helps them prepare for challenges within the COVID-19 pandemic, but also beyond. So talking is super important. Tailoring what you share when you have those conversations to their developmental stage and specific questions they're asking. So depending on the age of kids, obviously the conversations need to adjust. And knowing that you're answering the question that they're asking and not oversharing is another super important point to that conversation. The next tip is checking in often. So, not just having one conversation with the young person, but also checking in more often than you might normally do. Kids are experiencing a roller coaster of emotions, sometimes feeling good and sometimes not feeling good. And so having a check-in on one day, things could change drastically the next day. And so it's just making sure you have lots of good check-ins with them and letting them know that they can talk to you about anything, anytime, anywhere, and whatever they're feeling is okay. The next tip is to calm their fears. So lots of times, especially in a situation like the COVID-19 pandemic, kids may be worrying about the future, and many of us are. And so I think it's important for them to know that that's not just something that they're worrying about, that there are others worrying about it as well. When they're talking to you about those fears, instilling some hope and some resilience is important. I think that letting them know how to be hopeful for the future and worry less about it is going to help them learn how to manage their emotions with COVID-19, but also lots of things. And it's important for us to role model that for our kids. The next tip is to get the facts. There's lots of information out there, and there's information overload. And so I think for our kids, it's important for us to let them know that we have to get accurate information from trustworthy sources. And so making sure that we're not relying on information that may be untrue or fabricated in any way. The next tip is around practicing online safety. In the pandemic, with all of the protection measures in place, our ability to socialize with peers as adults, but also for our kids, has drastically changed. And so our online access to peers has increased for many people. And so I think it's a very important time to practice some online safety with teenagers and younger kids, to let them know what the boundaries are around online safety in your home, but also how they can stay safe when they're using online ways to communicate with others. The next one is to teach acceptance. Unfortunately, certain groups have experienced some discrimination as a result of COVID-19. And I think that it's important that we let our kids know that that's never okay, and that COVID-19 is no one's fault. I think that it's also really important that we share information with our kids about what the effects on others are of stereotypes or discrimination or prejudice, and let them know what they can do to take a stand for others. The next tip is to reach out, to let kids know that when they need help, there's lots of people that they can reach out to. And there's lots of people in their home, but also places like Kids Help Phone and other online resources that they can use so that they can reach out to others, even if they're feeling like they can't reach out to parents. And the last tip is to take care. I think that now more than ever, we need to nurture our mental, physical, and emotional and spiritual health. And so one of the things that I think will come out of this pandemic is a lot of us being more in touch with those things and having some skills that will help us now and beyond. And so obviously that's really the crux of our group, is to teach some of those skills to the kids so they can manage the pandemic, but beyond. So we wanted to just show you a quick video. This video was put together by Dr. Russ Harris. He's a pretty well-known doctor. He's known for ACT therapy, which is a therapy, it's acceptance and commitment therapy. And really what it focuses on is kind of being able to accept your hardships, accept hardships in life, whatever they may be. And when we accept those, then it can improve our overall health and happiness. And so he's put together some steps that he thinks will help people manage COVID, face COVID.
When we face a crisis of any sort, fear and anxiety are inevitable. They are normal, natural responses to any challenging situation infused with danger and uncertainty. Face COVID is a set of practical steps for dealing with such situations. F is for focus on what's in your control. You can't control what happens in the future. You can't control coronavirus itself or the world economy or what other people do, and you can't magically control your thoughts and feelings. Fear, anxiety, and worry are inevitable. But you can control what you do here and now. So let's focus on that. A is for acknowledge your thoughts and feelings. Silently and kindly acknowledge whatever is showing up inside you. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories, sensations, urges. With curiosity, notice what's going on in your inner world. You might say to yourself, I'm noticing feelings of anxiety, or I'm having thoughts about getting sick, or I'm having feelings of loneliness. And as you continue acknowledging your thoughts and feelings, bring in the next step, which is C, come back into your body. Find your own way of connecting with your physical body. For example, you might try slowly pressing your feet hard into the floor, or slowly pressing your fingertips together, slowly stretching your arms or your neck, or shrugging your shoulders, or slowly breathing. And as you acknowledge your thoughts and feelings and come back into your body, you then move to E, which is for engage in what you're doing. Get a sense of where you are here and now, and refocus your attention on the activity at hand. Notice 5 things you can see, 5 things you can hear. Notice what you can touch and taste and smell. Notice what you are doing and give your full attention to that activity. And then C is for committed action. This means effective action guided by your core values. Action you take because it's important to you, even if it brings up difficult thoughts and feelings. Of course, this includes following official guidelines on what to do during this crisis. But in addition, ask yourself regularly, what can I do right now, no matter how small it may be, that improves life for myself or others I live with or people in my community? And whatever the answer is, do it and engage in it fully. O is for opening up. This means making room for difficult feelings and being kind to yourself. As this crisis unfolds, we'll all feel fear, anxiety, anger, sadness, guilt, loneliness, and so on. We can't stop these painful feelings from arising, but we can open up and make room for them. Acknowledge they are normal, allow them to be there even though they hurt, and treat ourselves kindly. Consider what are kind words you can say to yourself and kind things you can do for yourself to help you cope with this suffering. V is for values. Committed action should be guided by your core values. What do you want to stand for in the face of this crisis? What sort of person do you want to be as you go through this? How do you want to treat yourself and others? Your values might include love, respect, humor, patience, courage, honesty, caring, openness, kindness, compassion, or numerous others. Look for ways to sprinkle your values into your day and let them guide and motivate your actions. I is for identify resources. Identify resources for help, assistance, support, and advice. This includes friends, family, neighbors, health professionals, and emergency services. Make sure you know the emergency helpline phone numbers, including those for psychological help if required. D is for disinfect and distance. Remember to disinfect regularly and practice physical distancing for the greater good of your community. Please run through the steps of Face COVID as often as you can for the benefit of yourself, your loved ones, and all the people in your community.
So we're going to switch gears a little bit and watch just a brief video about self-care tips for parents, and this was put out by UNICEF.
Under the stress of the pandemic, it's important to remember that we are best able to take care of our children and our teenagers when we take really good care of ourselves. Remember, you create the atmosphere in your home. And if you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, it's hard to create the supportive and positive environment that you want to have for your children. In order to recharge, there are 3 things you can do. 1, make sure you've got good social support. This means having someone you can tell your worries to, and a person or a group who helps you to feel connected and accepted. 2, make sure you have happy distractions. This means taking a mental vacation from the pandemic or even the challenges of being a parent sometimes. Find something that you enjoy and that recharges you so that you can come back to parenting with the energy that you want to have. 3, make sure you're taking great care of yourself physically. Try to get enough sleep, be active, eat well, and enjoy what you're eating. Taking good care of ourselves is absolutely critical to being able to be the parents we want to be right now. Remember, children learn to cope with challenges by watching how their parents manage difficult times. Being kind to yourself, especially in the context of the pandemic, offers your children a positive model for how they should care for themselves, both now and in the future.
So what we decided when we were kind of putting this together was it's really important for us to touch on ways for parents to create some different strategies for their own self-care. So as you saw in that video, how we cope not only affects our children because it changes our level of patience and ability to manage their distress, but we can also model for them how to manage in these types of situations. So if we can focus on that, you get that double bonus from it. So there's about 8 different strategies. We're just going to touch base on them briefly. Some of them are quite similar to the ones in the Dr. Harris video. They might use some different wordings, but they kind of follow that same path. The first strategy that we wanted to touch base on was recognizing and validating your emotions. So the first of that is understanding what you're feeling. So there's no right or wrong feelings, and all of the feelings that we have are there for a reason. So we try to acknowledge what our feeling is when we're in a situation, no matter what that feeling is. So identify and acknowledge it. We don't want to judge ourselves for that feeling. Oftentimes we can think that we should be feeling a certain way or we shouldn't be feeling another way towards, say, our situation or children and things like that. And there's no right or wrong way, but what we want to do is to look at what the feeling or the emotion is and figure out what we need, why it's there, and what we need from that. So if you look at this sheet, Each of these 8 different strategies are all taken from the Trails to Wellness website, and each of the strategies has a list of additional resources. So this one gives a nice snapshot of what those resources look like on that website. So for instance, for the Recognize and Validate Emotions strategy, you will see a list of different resources. A couple of these are news articles. There's some other information and a couple of audio support, meditation, and things like that. So it just shows you a little bit of what those resources on the website will look like. When we're done the presentation, at some point we will be emailing you a copy of the what we have here, and then that way you can hopefully click on the links and it will take you right to it. And if the link doesn't work for whatever reason, it does have, we will have what the website is to be able to get to these as well. The second strategy that we want parents to be able to focus on is being able to stay in the present. So oftentimes when we're overwhelmed with emotions, one of the most beneficial things we can do is refocus ourselves on the current situation. So this is by kind of just slowing things down and focusing on one moment at a time. So focusing on what's going on right then and there, as opposed to trying to look too far ahead or at too much. Feelings and emotions can feel really big. So comparing them to a wave is a really nice way to look at it, because what happens is that they will come up, the emotion will peak, but then it will kind of eventually go back down. So even if the situation doesn't change around us, the emotion won't stay at that peak. So sometimes instead of trying to fight against that feeling, what we want to do is to just be able to accept that the feeling's there and be able to recognize that the feeling is temporary and will go away. Focusing on your 5 senses. So Dr. Harris did talk about that in his video when he was talking about, he was talking about putting his fingers together or feeling your feet on the ground. So essentially it's just going into your 5 senses. So sight, sound, touch, taste, or smell, and just trying to create with each of those, just noticing them. That helps us keep us in the moment. Oftentimes our mind really likes to have certainty and it likes to have control. And unfortunately at this time, it's hard for us to have either of those. And so one way that we can try to manage when we're feeling uncertain or out of control is to really look and see if any of the thoughts that we're having are unhelpful or unrealistic. Sometimes we can make them a lot bigger in our mind than they are. We can make them worse in our mind than they are, or we can give ourselves less credit with being able to cope with them than we actually could if we were in a situation. So this kind of goes that we will be talking about this with the kids in more detail, but it's just a very brief review of how you can identify what your worried thought is, really look at that thought and see if it is realistic or if we've made it bigger than it is, and then develop a believable or helpful coping thought. So you want to make sure that the thought that you replace it with is genuine. You don't want to come up with just a general happy thought, because it won't work. It has to be something that's true to you, that makes sense to you, that helps you recognize that the thought that you had initially was unrealistic. Considering what's within your control. We talk about this a lot with students at this time, because right now in the world, there's a lot of things that are not within our control, but there's also things that are within our control. So what we want to really do is to focus on recognizing the things we have control over and then problem solving with those. What we have to do for the other piece of it is we have to be able to accept the things that are not in our control. So acceptance doesn't mean that we are in agreement with them or that we're okay with that or we like it, but it's just recognizing it's something we can't control and therefore no longer resisting it, focusing our attention more on the things that we can control. So for instance, right now, we can't control that we have online school. It's something that's out of our control, it's out of our children's control, but we can control whether we try to stay connected with our friends or our peers from school, whether we stay on top of our schoolwork, whether we get a good night's sleep and things like that. So just taking all of that energy and focusing it to what we can control as opposed to what we can't. cultivating positive emotions. Sometimes in these situations, it's really hard to recognize what the positives are. And sometimes what can happen too is when we do recognize the positives, we almost feel guilty for having positives because other people might be in different situations and have a different outcome. So, instead of looking at it as a guilt, it's really shifting it to looking at it from a place of gratitude. So focusing on our positives and showing some gratitude for those things. And that could be as simple as just focusing on 3 small things that were positive that you had in the day. So, they could be as small as it was sunny out today, or that the technology worked for me today, or that I was able to connect with a friend even for a couple of minutes, because they can be really small things, but focusing on them really can help with our overall mood. Again, it talks about using your 5 senses. So what and how they're using it in this strategy is doing something that you enjoy, but instead of just doing something you enjoy, focus on your senses and be mindful of it, because you will be able to appreciate it more at that point. Paying attention and planning some positive events. So this may be, you have to sometimes organize them. It feels overwhelming, but it can be helpful. And then establishing a regular gratitude practice. So whether or not this is through writing things out or talking with somebody about what your gratitude is for that day. This one, staying connected, we've heard a lot about this over the pandemic from a lot of different resources, and we hear about it a lot because it's an important one. It's just trying to connect with other people. Right now, we have to do it either virtually. We can, even if we can just sit on our balcony or sit out front, just see other people going by. Sometimes just seeing that there's other people around, even if we're not talking with them, can be helpful. The one I do want to highlight on here is using social media wisely. So social media can be great for helping us stay connected and entertained, but it can also create a lot of upsetting feelings, or it can help us or make us feel excluded or anxious in certain situations. So you just really want to gauge what you're looking at with that. One tip can be for parents, and then also for kids, but I noticed for parents as well, is give yourself a timer. So if it's half an hour, if it's an hour, let yourself browse your social media for a bit. But when that timer goes off, really take a look and see where it's putting your mood. So, if it's helping and this is you're in a good place from it, then you can continue that. But if you're noticing, I'm just kind of mindlessly looking, or it's actually stressing me out more, then it's making a choice to step away from it at that point. Getting active. This is another one that we hear a lot about. Really the point that I want to just highlight is that we're not competing with anybody. So getting active just means doing a little bit more than you're doing for yourself right now. There's certainly, we'd like to get it up to 15 to 30 minutes of an increased heart rate in a day, but small goals are better than no goals. And you want to have them be realistic goals so you can feel accomplished through it. Balancing structure and flexibility. This one, we crave consistency and structure, and unfortunately in the way that days have been working for the past year, there's not as much consistency or structure as we're used to. So we have to create that. So starting with the first priority being your basic physical needs. So this is things like sleep, exercise, nutrition, basic self-care. Once you give yourself and create time for those, then you're moving in taking care of your emotional, intellectual and spiritual needs. So this is making time for physical, mental breaks, social connections, maybe meditation or prayer. And then finally, it's doing some of those extra activities that can bring you some comfort or some joy. So now the reason that you're here. So thank you for, we found it important to kind of share a little bit of that, because not only is that helpful for you to know for yourself, but it gives you a little bit of an idea of what the group's going to look like, but more tailored towards your children. So Trails to Wellness is a group that was created through the University of Michigan, and since 2013 they've been running the program in Michigan classrooms. There's 3 different age groups. There's grade 3 to 5, grade 6 to 8, and then a high school version of it. They've actually recently created one more focused on COVID-19 and the pandemic and supporting students through that. That's the one that we are going to be using for the kids. So in general, what it does is it teaches coping strategies, ways to manage difficult emotions, and then it has it slides in the information about how we're impacted by COVID-19, so it makes it pertinent to the situation right now. The group is psychoeducational, so it's more about sharing information and teaching and building skills. It's not a therapy-based group, so the kids will have a similar setup that you have right now. And the reason that we have it that way is it allows us to open it up to a bigger group of children, but it also keeps that confidentiality for the different students. So we will have it a little bit different because Kim and I do want to try to make it interactive, even though it's not interactive. So we will be talking probably directly with them a little bit more as opposed to less presenting mode. And hopefully we can engage them in that way. So this just shows some testimonials. This is just some students that have gone through the they've gone through the regular program in the past, and just some things that they enjoyed about the group. There's